Ladies and gentlemen, warriors of spirit, seekers of freedom, today I want to talk to you about something unusual, something powerful, a gesture so simple it might make you raise your eyebrows, putting salt in your toilet. The power of symbolic action is one of the most underestimated forces in human transformation. At first glance, the idea of putting salt in your toilet may sound odd, maybe even superstitious. But when you look deeper, you begin to see that the ritual itself is not the point. It's what the ritual represents. Every action we take with intention becomes a signal to the subconscious mind, a message that change is beginning. Salt, long known as a purifier in ancient traditions, carries with it a deep symbolic meaning. It is not only used to season and preserve, but to cleanse, to protect, to cast out, and to make sacred what was once defiled. When you put salt into your toilet, you're not just dealing with the physical world, you're speaking to your inner self, commanding it to release and let go. Symbolic action works because the human brain is deeply responsive to ritual. Think about how ceremonies, blessings, and rites of passage have existed in every culture throughout time. We have always needed symbols to represent our transitions. A wedding ring is just a metal band, but what it means can move people to tears. A national flag is just cloth and color, but it can inspire armies to rise or people to weep in pride. In the same way, salt in your toil, it is not just a cleaning product, it is a conscious, spiritual act of release and renewal. When done with awareness, it becomes an energetic shift, a silent but powerful declaration. I am ready to let go of the curses I carry. These curses may not be dark spells or incantations. More often, they are emotional residues left behind by life's pain, childhood trauma, broken relationships, limiting beliefs, generational wounds. They live in the body, in the mind, and even in the space around you. The simple act of flushing salt down the toilet becomes a ceremony of clearing. It becomes a signal to the psyche that says, I no longer accept this weight. I am purifying my space. I am taking my power back. The toilet itself is not symbolic by accident. It is the very place we discard what our bodies no longer need. It is designed for release, for cleansing, for letting go. When you combine that with salt, you are combining physical elimination with energetic purification. This is the essence of symbolic action, using the ordinary to tap into the extraordinary. We often think healing has to be complex years of therapy, deep meditations, or spiritual journeys. But sometimes, healing begins in the smallest moments. It begins when you stand in your own bathroom, holding a handful of salt and saying, "This ends here." You're not relying on superstition. You're relying on intention. You're using symbolism as a bridge between the unseen and the seen, between your internal world and your external environment. When you pour salt into your toilet with this awareness, you are also bringing your focus into the present. You're not doing it absent-mindedly. You are making a choice. You are saying, I am releasing guilt. I am releasing anger. I am flushing away fear, shame, bitterness, or ancestral trauma. That moment becomes sacred because it's not about what's being flushed away. It's about who is rising in that moment, the one who chooses, the one who lets go, the one who is willing to trust that symbolic action matters. It's not just spiritual, science supports it too. Studies in psychology show that rituals, whether religious or personal, help people process grief, trauma, and transition. They give a sense of control and grounding when life feels chaotic. When you perform a symbolic act like pouring salt and flushing it down, you're engaging your brain in a moment of clarity. You're literally rewiring yourself to associate that act with release, with movement, with freedom. And as you continue to repeat the action with intention, the effect compounds. Your nervous system begins to recognize the act as calming. Your energy becomes lighter. You begin to trust in your ability to let go. You no longer feel stuck or cursed by things outside your control, because you're doing something, even if symbolic, that shows your mind and body that you are shifting. And eventually, the outside world follows the internal decision. Symbolic action reminds us that change doesn't always start with force. Sometimes it starts with surrender, with quiet release, with a handful of salt and a toilet bowl, with a deep breath and a whisper of intention. These moments, though small, are not insignificant. They are acts of sovereignty. You are claiming your space, your energy, your life. In conclusion, the power of symbolic action lies not in superstition, but in intention. Putting salt in your toil, it may look ordinary, but it carries a message to your soul. You are ready to break the patterns that have held you back. You are ready to cleanse what no longer serves. You are ready to declare your space sacred and your life yours again. Never underestimate the power of a small act performed with deep purpose. In the end, it's not about the salt, it's about who you become when you choose to release. Curses are often misunderstood in modern life. When people hear the word curse, they think of dark magic or supernatural forces cast upon someone from outside. But in truth, the most dangerous curses are the ones that are invisible, unspoken, and inherited through generations. These curses are not found in rituals with candles or spells. They are found in the words spoken over you when you were a child, in the trauma that runs through your family line, and in the repeating cycles of emotional and mental pain that no one dares to question. Breaking generational and emotional patterns means facing the truth that what we don't heal, we pass on. What we don't transform, we repeat. Imagine growing up in a home where emotions were not discussed, where vulnerability was punished, where love was given only under conditions. That experience becomes internalized, forming unconscious beliefs such as "I am not enough," "love must be earned," or "success comes with suffering." These beliefs become emotional blueprints, and without realizing it, we begin to live them out. We choose relationships that match our wounded patterns. We sabotage our own opportunities, and we inherit the pain of our ancestors without understanding why. This is the nature of a curse, not something cast upon you, but something you carry because you were never taught how to release it. When you engage in symbolic rituals, such as putting salt in your toilet, you are not just performing a quirky act. You are making a declaration to yourself and to the universe that the cycle stops with you. Salt, in its ancient and spiritual symbolism, is a purifier. It doesn't just cleanse physically, it is believed to cut through energy, to reset vibrations, to absorb and neutralize what is no longer needed. When you pour salt into water and flush it down, you are making a physical statement of an emotional truth. I release what does not belong to me. I cleanse myself of pain that isn't mine to carry. This act becomes a spiritual interruption, a break in the pattern. What makes emotional and generational curses so hard to break is that they are often invisible. We think our lives are the result of bad luck, or that we are destined to repeat the failures of our parents. But the truth is, you have the power to interrupt these cycles. The moment you become aware of the pattern, you create the possibility of change. And change does not always begin with deep intellectual analysis. Sometimes it starts with action, small, symbolic, intentional action. Like pouring salt into a toilet, like lighting a candle with intention, like writing a letter to your past self and burning it. These rituals act as physical cues to your subconscious that you are releasing, cleansing, and rising into a new way of being. The beautiful thing about these symbolic actions is that they bypass the conscious mind, which is often stuck in logic and doubt. The subconscious, however, responds to images, repetition, and ritual. By turning your intention into a ritual, you activate the deeper part of yourself that governs your habits, emotions, and beliefs. You are reprogramming yourself to believe that you are no longer bound by your past. You are sending a clear message that you are now the author of your life, not a victim of it. Breaking generational patterns doesn't mean blaming your parents or grandparents. It means having compassion for the pain they endured and choosing to stop carrying it forward. It means grieving what you never received, forgiving what was done to you, and building new emotional structures based on truth, love, and awareness. The salt ritual, though simple, becomes a gateway to this process. It is not the end, it is the beginning. It is the moment you decide that your healing matters, that your peace is sacred, and that you no longer wish to live in cycles of survival. You may not even realize what you are breaking at first, but the more you practice these acts of release and cleansing, the more you will notice that your reactions change. You stop engaging in toxic patterns, you feel less triggered, you become more aware of your worth. This is how curses are broken, not through dramatic events, but through consistent, conscious choices made day by day. And over time, you realize that what once felt like fate was simply unhealed history. In conclusion, breaking generational and emotional patterns is not a mystical fantasy. It is a real, necessary act of self-liberation. The curses that hold us back are often disguised as beliefs we never chose, emotions we never processed, and cycles we never questioned. By performing simple symbolic acts like pouring salt into a toilet and flushing with intention, you are declaring your right to be free. You are cutting the energetic cords that tie you to pain, and you are stepping into your role as the cycle breaker, the healer, the conscious creator of your own destiny. The salt is not the power you are, but it is through that small act that your soul speaks, and through that flush, the weight of generations begins to wash away. Turning the ordinary into the sacred is one of the most powerful shifts a person can make in life. In a world obsessed with the dramatic, the flashy, and the extraordinary, we often overlook the quiet power of the everyday. Yet it is in the most mundane places, your kitchen sink, your morning routine, your bathroom toilet, where true transformation begins. Putting salt in your toilet, it might seem ridiculous at first, like a meaningless gesture or even a waste of time. But the truth is, it is an invitation to shift your perception, to stop seeing parts of your life as insignificant, to begin recognizing that sacredness is not found in some faraway temple, but in the present moment wherever you are. You don't need a special place to honor yourself. You only need presence, intention, and the willingness to see the divine in what is usually dismissed. The toilet is a perfect example of something we take for granted. It is where we release waste physically, and when done with awareness, emotionally and energetically, it is one of the most used but least appreciated spaces in the home. We rush in and out of it without thinking. But what if that place of flushing away waste could become a place of transformation? What if you could take a moment in that private space to breathe deeply, to pour in salt with awareness, and to see it not just as cleansing a drain, but as cleansing your life? This is what it means to turn the ordinary into the sacred, not by changing the world outside, but by changing the way you relate to it. Ritualizing daily moments creates a powerful psychological and spiritual structure the ordinary becomes a container for something much deeper. It becomes a doorway through which your inner life can be reshaped. That salt in your hand becomes more than just a mineral. It becomes your intention, your emotion, your unspoken pain, and your decision to release. When you pour it into the toilet, you're not just letting go of physical matter. You are letting go of the invisible burdens you've been carrying. The salt becomes your prayer, the water becomes your surrender, the flush becomes your release. This is how transformation begins, not in sudden miracles, but in 1,000 quiet choices to see with new eyes. Most people search their whole lives for peace, purpose, and spiritual awakening. They travel far, seek out teachers, and look for signs. But the most profound spiritual truth is that everything you are seeking already lives within you. The sacred is not somewhere else. It is here, now, waiting to be recognized. When you bring reverence to your ordinary life, your life transforms. When you decide that even flushing a toilet can be an act of liberation, then every part of your existence becomes infused with meaning. You stop waiting for change to come from outside and begin to live from the inside out. This is not about religion or superstition. This is about mindfulness, about being present, about choosing to live with awareness. There is a kind of magic in doing something ordinary with extraordinary presence, and that presence is what creates the shift. That salt in your hand, placed in the toilet with intention, is a moment where the sacred enters the physical. It is your declaration that your pain is worthy of release, that your healing matters, that your inner world is just as important as your outer world. And the best part is, you don't need anyone's permission. You don't need special tools, special clothes, or a spiritual guru. You just need to be willing to meet your life exactly where it is, and to make space for meaning. Sacredness isn't about perfection or performance. It's about presence. It's about taking the parts of your life that feel dull, repetitive, or forgotten, and giving them the attention they deserve. When you bring your awareness to those moments, they transform, and in turn you transform. This shift in perspective also impacts your mental health and emotional balance. By honoring simple rituals, you calm your nervous system. You create a structure for reflection, release, and renewal. You begin to feel more grounded, more centered, more whole. The act of ritual becomes a stabilizing force in your life. It becomes a practice of self-love, of emotional hygiene, of spiritual alignment. The toilet becomes your altar. The salt becomes your offering. The water becomes your cleansing. And slowly, without drama or force, your life begins to shift. You become more aware of your emotions. You become more compassionate with yourself. You stop judging your past and start learning from it. You stop fearing the future and begin shaping it, one small, sacred moment at a time. In conclusion, turning the ordinary into the sacred is not about changing your life overnight. It's about learning to see your life through new eyes. It's about recognizing that healing does not require grand gestures or dramatic breakthroughs. Sometimes it requires nothing more than presence. The salt you pour into your toilet, when done with intention, becomes a spiritual act of release and renewal. It's a reminder that every moment holds the potential for transformation, that you don't need to escape your life to heal. You only need to meet it with reverence. And when you do, the ordinary becomes sacred, the mundane becomes miraculous, and you become whole. The mind-body energy connection is an undeniable force in the human experience. While we often separate these elements as if they belong to different systems, they are deeply intertwined, constantly influencing one another. What happens in your thoughts affects your body. What happens in your body influences your emotions. What happens in your emotional energy can either support your growth or sabotage it silently. When you engage in a simple act like putting salt in your toilet and flushing it down, you're not merely completing a symbolic task. You're triggering a powerful shift across all three levels: mental, physical, and energetic. This small act speaks to your subconscious mind, communicates with your body's memory, and resets the invisible energy patterns that surround and influence your daily life. Your subconscious doesn't speak the language of logic. It understands images, repetition, symbols, rituals, and feelings. So, when you repeat a symbolic action with clear intent, it doesn't just sit in your mind as a passive idea. It becomes a command. Your mind interprets that salt as something meaningful. Your body begins to react as if you truly are letting something go. The flush becomes a release signal, not only for physical waste, but for emotional and energetic debris you've held for far too long. In that moment, your nervous system receives a cue that something old is ending and something new is beginning. And that in itself begins to bring calm, order, and clarity to your inner world. There is science behind this. Studies in neuropsychology show that the brain doesn't fully distinguish between imagined experience and real experience. If you mentally rehearse peace, your body begins to relax as if peace is present. If you act out the process of letting go, even symbolically, your emotional system responds accordingly. Rituals like pouring salt and flushing it become anchors in your nervous system, grounding you in the experience of release and renewal. And when you make that a habit, your body starts to feel lighter, your thoughts begin to shift, and your energy becomes clearer. But it's not just about psychology or biology. It's also about energy. Everything carries energy: your thoughts, your emotions, your environment. If your home is filled with old resentments, unresolved grief, or unspoken anger, those vibrations settle into the walls, into the furniture, and even into the water you use every day. This is why space clearing and energy rituals have existed for centuries in every culture. Salt, being a grounding and purifying mineral, is known to absorb negativity and cleanse stagnant energy. When you place salt into the toilet and flush it away, you're literally creating a current of energy movement. Water is one of the most powerful energy conductors on Earth, and when combined with salt and intention, it becomes an agent of transformation. The connection becomes even more real when you consider how your body reacts to stuck energy. People often carry emotional pain in physical form: tight shoulders, migraines, stomach pain, chronic fatigue. These physical symptoms are often signals of unresolved emotions or energetic congestion. When you begin to move that energy out through ritual, breath, movement, or cleansing practices, you may notice a shift in your body. You breathe easier, you sleep deeper, you feel clearer. It may not always be dramatic, but it is real. The salt flush, performed with awareness, becomes more than symbolic. It becomes somatic. It speaks to your body and says, "You are safe to let go now." Additionally, your environment starts to respond. As your energy clears, so does your space. You might notice fewer arguments, more clarity in decision making, or simply a sense of peace where there was once heaviness. This is the energetic ripple effect. The act of flushing with salt is a declaration to the universe: I no longer hold on to what dims my light, and the universe listens. It begins to rearrange circumstances, remove blocks, and create room for alignment. Opportunities, connections, and insights begin to flow in, not because of magic, but because you are no longer resisting the flow. You've opened yourself to it. Your body, mind, and energy field work together like a symphony. When one is out of tune, the rest suffers. But when you bring them into harmony, even through the smallest acts, your entire experience of life begins to elevate. You become more present, more empowered, more attuned to your needs. You begin to trust your intuition more. You respond to challenges with greater clarity, and you make decisions that reflect your worth, not your wounds. That's what healing really is, not the absence of pain, but the presence of alignment. In conclusion, the mind-body energy connection is not a theory. It is a living truth that affects every moment of your life. When you engage in a conscious act like putting salt in your toilet and flushing it with intention, you are activating this connection on all levels. You are resetting your nervous system, communicating with your subconscious, and clearing your energy field. You are telling your entire being that it's safe to release, to grow, and to transform. And while the act may seem small, the impact is profound. Because healing doesn't require a dramatic event. Sometimes it begins with salt, water, and a choice. A choice to let go, a choice to rise, a choice to return to wholeness.